Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder of Streamlined Properties and the team leader of Streamlined Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. Whether you are looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
This is episode 57 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Perry Keenan. Perry is an entrepreneur, real estate investor, former mayor, and the founder of Keenan and Associates, which is an insurance and asset management company. Perry, welcome to the show.
Dude, so excited to be here, man. You guys are awesome. I love it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I'm just going to go right into it because I want to find out about this mayor thing because it's definitely part of your branding. So are you still a mayor or were you a mayor? Give us a deal on that before we get to investing.
Yeah, no, I happily retired. So spent in our hometown of Pleasant View, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville, about 20 or 25 minutes outside of Nashville. Spent 4 years as a city council and vice mayor, and then spent a little time off. The economy crashed and needed to take some time off to just kind of focus on God, family, and work. And after that, had some doors of opportunity open in 2012 and ran for mayor and got elected and then got reelected. And after 8 years, I said, I need a break. So was happy to retire at the end of 2020.
Yeah, amazing. Do you think that your involvement in city government for that long helped you when it came to real estate? Because there's so many of like machinations that happen with municipalities. Did you have more info, do you think, on that end than maybe a normal person?
You know, honestly, not really. I actually made it a point to never do any real estate investing in my hometown while I was mayor.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't really think I did any real estate investing in our county. I'd have to go back and double check that, but I don't think I even did any real estate investing in our county while I was mayor. I just really did not want that appearance of, he had some backside information or some, insider info. It's a small town and everybody knows you. And I just tried my best not to ever give that appearance.
Yeah, I meant more for like now as someone who's been flipping so much, that each town you go into, you try it, you start to do something. The way that town works on the back end is a little different. Your experience from inside the municipal end has to help you.
Yes.
Not just because you were mayor, but because you know how it works and that each municipality is differently when it comes to enforcing regulations.
It absolutely did not hurt because, when I would get into a situation where if it wasn't just something like a standard house flip and, the average everyday real estate investor, may get into a situation and not know exactly like who to call or what, stumps to uncover, so to speak, as we would say here. You get into a situation where something is non-conforming and it's two houses on one lot and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, I know that is actually not legal. And so instead of just walking away from it, because of that experience as mayor, I know who to call, the codes department, building inspectors, all of that type of thing to really dig deep to find if this was something that was legit. Am I going to have problems down the road? That kind of thing. So yes, that part of it definitely gave me that insider, track of being forward thinking of who I needed to call to confirm things.
Yeah. So how old were you when you first got interested in real estate?
Well, I would say really like beginning it as a passion, probably in my early 30s. Mom and dad grew up. My mom was a real estate agent. They had a small real estate office growing up and had done a little bit of real estate investing, but not on the scale like what you see people do today. But, they've always had that entrepreneurial spirit that I'm so glad that I inherited from them.
Yeah.
And in going through, some of that with them and seeing, what they've done in real estate. And then, where my office is actually located now in Pleasant View, Tennessee, they actually own the shopping center that's there and that type of thing. And so from that standpoint, it just kind of was bred in early, but not to the degree that you see, like some of your guests do, or people that you get on Bigger Pockets, or
Sure.
that kind of thing. So
Yeah, but it's cool to see where it starts. I mean, when you knew, even then, with access to real estate, was it something that you were interested in? As you were going through your careers, you're like, oh, I mean, one day maybe I'll start to invest too, like they did, and on the smaller end.
yeah, actually, no. Honestly, it never really crossed my mind. And we had a good friend, he and his wife, Steve Outlaw, and his wife, Melissa, they had invited us to go to a real estate conference in Nashville around 2005, I
Hmm.
guess, ish. This guy that was coming to town, and his name was Ron LeGrand. And Ron LeGrand, God bless him, he's about 162 years old now,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, but if people would remember from the 90s, the late night infomercials, buy my VHS tapes and I'll teach you how to flip houses and that type of thing. And so he had a seminar. It was like $200 for the weekend, which was really just a feeder for his boot camp, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
yeah,
That was $5,000.
yeah,
And he would really, really teach you how to do stuff. But I picked up enough out of that 2-day weekend that he did. And Steve and I, we said, okay, well, we're going to give this a shot. And we started, mailing letters out to people that were in foreclosure. And man, I'll never forget, first time the phone rang, and somebody, it's a number that I didn't recognize. And this lady said, hey, I got your letter in the mail. And if you'd really like to buy my house, I would love to talk. And I'm sitting there on my phone like, I don't know what to say,
this worked.
like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe it actually worked. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, so short story long, we ended up getting that house and helped that lady out. She was in foreclosure and we were able to get her out of that situation. We took the house over, flipped the house, and I think we made about $7,000 or $8,000, and then thought, holy cow, we have found the goose and the golden egg.
yeah,
And then we lost money on like the next two.
yeah. Well, I mean, gotta take your learning there. But I think you said something important. It's the word help. I mean, I think that a lot of commodified investing now is all built on like getting profits and scaling up. But the best investors are there to try to help someone get out of whatever they are
Yeah.
dealing with in their house. And so for pre-foreclosure, that can be a great one. You help them out before they get foreclosed and try to make a
Mhm.
win-win for both sides. Did you feel like you at the time that people skills were going to be as important? Like, did you know that? I know you go to the Ron LeGrand thing, they tell you
Yes.
what to do, but did you realize that it was really going to be more of a person to person thing? Like you said, the phone rings and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, like yeah. I did, and my growing up again in an entrepreneurial family, never had an issue of being able to talk to people. I can find some commonality on any level, just about. And so when they said, "Yeah, we want you to come over and sit down at the kitchen table and talk to us about it," I said, "Shoot, yeah, absolutely, would love that." I always feel like I've got a face for radio, but I am better in person when I'm sitting across the desk, because there's just something about that where if you're sitting across the desk from someone or at the kitchen table, they can truly sense your genuineness, and they can pick up pretty quick if you're just in it because you're trying to fatten your own wallet, or are you truly trying to help them in a situation,
Yeah.
but at the same time it's going to benefit you as well. And it just that people sense that genuineness. And I a lot of times when I get asked to speak at different events, that's one of the things that I really try to hammer is, check your heart first. Always check your heart. Make sure that your motives are pure before you're going into something like this, because greed will get you every single time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I'm old school. I learned from my dad. So we were doing that, 30 years ago. But do you feel like it's gotten harder because now with the internet and social media, it looks like everybody's an investor. Everybody wants to be a wholesaler. So people are coming in with these more hard sell techniques, which is common for any sales business. But it's hard to they come in with, fake numbers first. And then you're like, well, that's never going to work for you. So you have to, you really have to almost like play against that to see what they're going to do. What do you think about that in terms of like what it's like now compared to what it was then?
So I'll take it in a couple of different directions, and I'll try not to shiny squirrel too much.
Yeah,
But
no worries.
I think for the person that's looking at just getting started, the shows like I love Chip and Joanna, but you don't flip a house in an hour.
Yeah.
Tarek and Christina, their show was highly entertaining, but you don't flip a house in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And, as and several of your guests that you've had on your show, that they've referenced, it's work. I mean, it's a fun job. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. And it's crazy flexible, but it's still a lot of work. And, I typically don't flip houses in 30 minutes. It usually takes a little bit longer
45.
than that, maybe 45 minutes, an hour on a bad day. But, that's one of the things that I think give a lot of people a false sense of what it's really like to be a real estate investor. Now, I'll come around the backside of that and say that podcasts like yours, local real estate meetups, the REI meetings, and those kinds of things, when people are attending those and they're getting educated, when you're listening to podcasts and you're getting educated, it really does kind of help tamper some of that expectation. And I try to tell people that, yes, there are lots of success stories where somebody does their first flip and they'll make a 6-figure profit. They'll do their first wholesale deal and not even touch it and make 25 or 50 grand. Those are certainly out there, but those are not the ones that happen every single day, regardless of what Grant Cardone says. Love 10X, but it just doesn't always happen that way. So I tell people that real estate is get rich steady, which is better than get rich never. And if they just use tenacity, perseverance, and just take action, just take action, then, everything else will fall into place. I had a meeting last night with somebody that I'd met through a local real estate meetup. And they're actually using us for their insurance services. They just did their first house flip, buy and hold, and they were so excited. And I loved seeing that. And we kind of swapped some stories back and forth. And I said, I'll never forget like my first one that I did. Like I was excited, I was nervous, it was amazing. And I still get that sense now, regardless of how many doors, that we've done or how many houses that we've flipped. And I said, but it does get easier. And when you take action that first time, outside of all of the stuff where you've got, syndicates and everything else that are coming in and buying up, $4 and $5 and $6 million worth of real estate at a time, when you just do your first one, everything else after that, even if it gets harder, it's easier because you're like, oh, well, I've done this before and I'll just figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I feel like there's some variables that are always adjusting, like contractors, service providers, like they can come and go, but you're exactly right. You kind of know how to handle it. Like I just expect all of my contractors at some point not to show up. Just disappear for a couple of weeks, like as if it's no big deal. You need to have a couple people, behind them at all times. But yeah, it's interesting to see how flipping has changed with the shows that you talked about, because I do think it helps because it shows how you can revitalize homes, keep the character of homes, not suck the soul out of these beautiful homes. But it also does give that, hey, this is easy. And then we're all over here like, I mean, it's definitely not easy. And that, I think one thing that the shows miss is the true costs, because what their costs are getting paid for. So it's not realistic. And then I think people go into how they use money. They're like, oh, well, sure, I'll take hard money. Why don't I just take a 14% loan? Yeah, because you don't know what you're doing. It's going to take you a year. You're going to cap out. You're going to have a balloon. It's going to be a big problem. Over the years, how many homes now have you flipped over all this time? Generally.
So we've probably flipped between 20 and 30 homes. So it's not a massive number in comparison to others. But a lot of that also is because around 2015, we shifted our mindset to more buy and hold.
Yeah.
And for us, there's a lot of people that are out there that say, oh, you need to get to 500 doors, or you need to partner and have ownership in 1,000 apartments and that kind of thing. And there is truly nothing wrong with that. And I think the big key for us is with my wife and I, and the way that we've looked at it is said, even if it's a smaller number, if we hold ownership in it 100% ourselves, then we're calling all the shots, we're making all the decisions. Something's awesome, yay us. Something
Yeah.
sucks, and pick up and move forward. We do partner from time to time with some other people. We've got some dear friends that he's also our attorney, which is great because
Yeah.
if we're partnered, he can't sue me
Yeah.
because he's conflicted out.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, we in doing some of this, he said, as an attorney, I know I'm going to get burnout. And I want to start working on a real estate portfolio. Would you and Misty be interested in working with my wife and I, and let's start acquiring some doors? I know some people really shy away from partnerships, but I think if you set the expectations right up front, we went into a partnership agreement that really kind of keeps people from getting their feelings hurt if there's a cash call or if, something, doesn't go right. Everything is spelled out in that document as to, how things are going to be handled. And so for people that, say, well, my next door neighbor and I, we both want to do this, but we're both a little scared to do it alone. So maybe we want to get in this together. Hey, great. Set expectations first, get a partnership agreement in place that kind of outlines everything. But then also, a lot of times you have to check your ego at the door. With our partner on some of our doors that we have with Chris, he loves to have a lot of input into the design aspect.
Mhm.
As many houses as my wife and I have flipped, I really don't care if we use this kind of baseboard or that kind of crown molding or whatever. I just want the thing to make money.
Yeah.
And, for him, he enjoys that because it gives him a little bit of escape from, his day-to-day grind that he's in his law firm. And so, some people could go in, with an attitude and say, oh, well, I've flipped 30 houses and we always do this baseboard. I don't care. That's not something that I want to dig in my heels on and say, no, we're going to use this baseboard because it's 25 cents a linear foot cheaper.
Yeah.
So, So sometimes partnerships, if you set those expectations out front first, they'll do great.
Yeah, it's really important. I think that people think, oh, well, we're friends, nothing could go wrong, but it can go wrong. I mean, it's almost more likely to go wrong then because you're counting on the fact that you don't have an agreement that will work everything out. But hey, if it's just two of you or four of you, you don't have a majority vote. It's a lock every time.
Yes.
So you have to figure out who breaks the decision for certain type of things to make sure that you're okay, or else you're just in a stalemate and then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely correct.
So do you invest mostly in your area or have you expanded outside of Tennessee?
So we're actually under contract right now for a mobile home park that is in Alabama. It is my first out-of-state investment deal that my wife and I are looking at. We thought the deal would go south. It looks like it's going to stay on track, and I really hope that it closes. It's not a huge deal. It's 13 mobile homes, but it's got potential. It's got challenges, as a lot of mobile home parks do, especially the smaller mom and pop ones. But, sometimes those diamonds in the rough, when you can go in and force equity and force appreciation through, certain tactics, man, it just turns out to be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and 13 pads or 13 mobile homes, that's a pretty safe starting point for a mobile home park. I mean, I think some people as investors, they, even if they're buying in apartments, they're like, oh, I have 1-2 family. Let me get 23 units. So that's a whole different beast. So 13 seems like a pretty safe thing to check into on the mobile home park. Was it something about mobile home parks that you were interested in as like a diversified investment?
Being a fan of Bigger Pockets, during the Brandon Turner years and the Josh Dorkin years, being an 80s hair metal junkie, and I love my 80s music. I would always listen to 80s music in the mornings at the gym. And my friend Chris, before we ever even got into real estate investing, he said, this would have been around maybe 2015, 2016. He said, I found this podcast and I think you ought to take a listen to it. It's called Bigger Pockets. And at the time I was actually flipping a house. And so I said, great. So I turned it on and man, I was hooked right from the beginning. And so I noticed I found myself listening to more and more podcasts and less 80s music. And so anyway, so short story long, was sitting in the gym one morning and doing crunches, and they were interviewing somebody about mobile home parks. And I had never really ever considered that at all. And then listened to another one about mobile home parks, and then another one. And then divine intervention, as a believer, I'll say it was not a coincidence. A lady that is a wholesaler locally reached out to me, and she said, hey, she said, there is a small mobile home park outside of Nashville. It's about an hour outside of Nashville. It's 15 pads. And I think that's something that would be right up your alley. You need to go take a look at it. And I thought, gosh, I've listened to all of this stuff over the last 10 days about mobile home parks. Let's go take a look. And went down, fell in love with it. Mom and pop owners, they were retiring. They put a contract on building their dream home by the lake somewhere in the Virginias, and they wanted to just cash out and go enjoy retirement. And we negotiated a price and worked through on that one. And I think they were at $650 or $675 on the purchase price. We ended up settling at $625 on the purchase price. And talking about that whole perseverance thing, I just had run into all of my traditional lenders that we use for either buying duplexes or flipping houses and that type of thing. Every single one of them said, boy, man, that looks like a great deal. We just don't loan on mobile home parks.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was scratching my head saying, well, I know this is going to make money. It's got to be the right deal. And real estate networking, as you've had guests on there preaching about, your network and how important that is, had reached out to a friend of mine that was a local. He had hosted a local meetup. His name is Michael Gomez. And I said, hey, man, I'm down here in Florida on vacation with the family. I said, but I'm crunching numbers on this mobile home park, and I know it's going to work, but I can't find a lender. And he laughed. He said, where are you at in Florida? And found out he was like 30 minutes down the road.
Oh, that's awesome.
We met the next night for a beer, and we sat down and talked about it. And he said, I got a guy. And so he literally, the next morning, I'm on vacation, he's on vacation, 30 minutes apart from each other. He connected me to a lender that said, ironically enough, back in the 90s, we held the mortgage on that mobile home park.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I know that park well. Didn't know it was for sale. Yeah, let me talk to the bank president and see if they would be interested in, getting this one kind of back in the fold.
Yeah.
And so he called me back 2 days later and said, yeah, let's lock it up. Oh, wow. Okay. And so we bought our first mobile home park. And then seeing what kind of profit return that we've had on that one and how that has worked gave me all the confidence to go out of state to find another one. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I have another tip for the listeners because one of my friends, Tommy Police, they bought this property that we call the Frankenstein property. And he talked about it when he was on Bigger Pockets Rookie, but it has mobile home park, self-storage, 48 acres and all this stuff. And when they went to buy it, it's similar to what you were, this like happenstance. They couldn't figure out who would lend on it also. It's in the Catskills. Nobody knows about it. And they became friends with the seller. Like they were just talking. And the seller, he said the seller had a loan on it. He said, well, who has a loan? He's like, oh, it's this local bank. So Tommy called up the local bank. He's like, hey, we're taking over this. Will you guys lend on this? They're like, yeah, of course. We already know the whole property. So Pro tip, if they do have a loan on it, just contact the bank. They've done all the due diligence on the property. And that's how it worked out for you. They held the mortgage years before. Have you found that that connectivity of real estate investors is such an amazing bridge through sites like Bigger Pockets and the REI meetups? Like you said, you meet so many people that, down the road could play a big role in either partnerships or other deals or, stuff like this, podcasts, getting information out to other investors.
So, being in politics for as long as we had been, the majority of the people, if you were to ask them on our hometown, hey, what outside of being mayor, what does Perry and his wife do? I'm like, I don't know. Being mayor of a small city outside of Nashville, here paid a whopping $1,000 a month. I know everybody wanted my job.
Sounds like my first government job as well.
Right. Right. And so, it barely covered the gas and the cell phone bill back and forth for all of the meetings. But, we were just really private about what we did, partly because, we just wanted to be private given, a public persona here locally, but also because we just didn't want to come across braggadocious. And, with that, as I started to kind of peel back the layers, I got more comfortable with going to REI meetings, the real estate meetups and networking and that type of thing. And during that period there, we were very private. Yeah. Now, looking back on it, would I have done things differently? Probably not, but I probably would have worked a little harder at fostering more relationships and more networking. I was just always shy because I didn't want that to actually overshadow, I don't know if people, I'm pointing to the sign of
there's a video too. Yeah. So, but that's important though. That's an ethical decision that makes you feel better about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then when that time is up, you can move in and then cross network and still maintain the ethical standards that you want, which, in real estate investing across the board, murky reputation, real estate overall. But it's nice to meet other people who are trying to help other people, which is what real estate investing, the kind of win-win philosophy, can be all about. Today's show is brought to you by Streamline Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. That is my on-market real estate team. We are investor friendly. We work traditional buyers, sellers, but we also work the investor sphere all the time. House hacking, short-term rentals, flipping, long-term holds, anything that you want to do. We're experienced in that arena. We work the whole state of New Jersey, Philadelphia County in Pennsylvania, Elko County in Nevada, and the Catskills region of New York. So whatever your investor needs are, you can count on us. You can go to Streamlined with a D .properties. Let's get back to the show. What's your favorite thing now about being an investor?
Okay, so I'll be very tongue-in-cheek and say I never have to ask myself if I can go on vacation. I'm pretty sure I'm always going to approve that, so I don't have to ask. The flexibility is great. Knowing that, especially if people are looking at buy and hold, knowing that you're building long-term net worth for your family, knowing that when you go on vacation, you're still making money and not in a, hey, I've got a 9-to-5 job and I get 2 weeks paid vacation kind of way. Like literally, there have been times that we've gone on vacation and I'll check the bank account and I'll be like, holy crap, oh yeah, that's right. It's the first of the month and, everybody paid their rent. Like, yeah. That's a pretty good feeling. It really is. Yeah. But if I'm being very genuine, the thing that I probably enjoy the most is if somebody comes to me with a problem child and they say, we're moving out of state. I don't have the money to fix my house up and I don't want to go through a real estate agent. Would you be interested in just buying my house as is, where is? Man, there is just something that is just good in your soul when you know that you are solving a problem for someone else that helps them, but you also get to make money at the same time. There's just no feeling like it. There's no feeling like it. I love that. And from that standpoint, it's not about trying to brag about, oh, I've got a mobile home park here and I've got another one under contract there. I love that feeling of helping.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that changes the dynamic. It also just makes you feel better about doing what you do. It's like, landlords who are really slumlords, they can't really feel good about what they're doing. It's going to come back at some point and not feel well, or there's going to be other ramifications for it. I wanted to touch on some things that I got in the pre-questionnaire. Tell us about Johnny Lindahl and how he affected your real estate investing trajectory, because I read a little bit about this and I think it's a really interesting story. And it's a place where a lot of investors go and need help to kind of get restarted, into what their passion is.
Man, love Johnny. He is literally like a second dad to me. So my mom and dad we were having dinner one night, and I was kind of just unloading my soul, so to speak, and telling them about, a house that we had that was just an absolute anchor around our neck. We had picked up a house right before the real estate crash in 2007, 2008. Really, it's one of those greed things, and I really should not have bought it, but we did. And, I was more interested in looking at the dollar signs instead of, always checking for the exit strategy. And when the market crashed, I couldn't flip the house. And so we had to convert it to a rental really quickly. And that one was just really hanging like an anchor around our neck. We were constantly upside down on the mortgage, even after we had it rented. And the renter that we had in it around that 2014, 2015, they were the kind of renter that they would, pay like every 3 months. So
My dad had a lot of those growing up.
Yeah. And so trying to be patient and a good-hearted Christian, I would say, okay, well, I'm not going to kick them out, and that had gone on for a couple of years. And so anytime they would get 3 months behind and, I would start, wearing his phone out, he'd make, like a $6,000 or $8,000 rent payment. Okay, great. And so we would go through that, and, it was what it was. And then we hit this stretch where, I'm calling at 3 months and saying, hey, man, oh, yeah, I got you. And then at 4 months, it's, oh, yeah, I've got a check coming. And then at 6 months, he said, yeah, we're going to end up having to move, but it's going to take us, 60 to 90 days to get out. Well, I called our attorney, and he said, well, I could go and get the eviction, but you're not going to be able to get him out really any sooner by the time you go through the detainer warrant and everything else.
Yeah.
And so at $2,000 a month, after 9 months, he was $18,000 behind. And, being a bad steward on that, it really just wrecked our finances because I'm still having to make the payment on it. And our payment was about $2,200 a month. So anyway, had just kind of gotten to that point where we were just at a breaking point. And, you're kind of sitting there looking at it saying, do we declare bankruptcy? What do we do? And Mom and Dad said, you know what? You need to go talk to Johnny Lindahl, family friend. He does a lot of real estate investing. Just call Johnny, tell him you want to have lunch. So I called him, and I kind of laid a little of that out. And he said, meet me Tuesday at this little Italian place for lunch. And so we go in, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's this really cool little Italian restaurant that has like the white paper tablecloth. And so we sit down, and immediately he just breaks out his calculator and his pen and his pencil. And he said, okay, let's go. And so like the breadsticks hadn't even hit the table yet. And we're already like literally writing on the paper tablecloth.
Yeah.
And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the owner of the restaurant, who he was close friends with, brought a pitcher of sweet tea, God bless the South, and said, hey,
that's the best.
It is the best. and Melanie said, hey, she said, I'm going to lock up. I've got to go run and pick up some supplies. I'll be back around 4, but you guys just show yourselves out the back door when you're done. And with that, literally, she left the restaurant, and we were there. And at the end of that, he said, when you're flipping houses, he said, what you're doing is you've created a job for yourself. He said, now it's a good job. It creates a good income, and you've got a lot of flexibility. But what happens if you don't find another house to flip? And I said, well, I guess the income dries up. And he said, that's right. He said, but you need to get into the rental game seriously, and you need to get to 10 doors as quickly as possible. And my head went on a swivel, and I said, no, I'm trying to get rid of the one that I got. Why in the hell would I want to get 8 or 9 more? He said, no. He said, power of 10, Perry. He said, when you get to 10 doors, the stress at that point goes away because you've got 1 or 2 that are empty, or you've got to replace the carpet or the water heater, or you've got, a bad tenant, you're having to evict somebody. The income from the other 6 or 7 are going to carry the note and the nut for the insurance, the property taxes, and all the other stuff that comes along with that. And you won't be stressed like you are right now. And I just remember thinking in my head, man, golly, I do not want to get into that situation. But I couldn't argue with a guy that's got 150 doors. And so went home and I talked to my wife about it, and she said the same thing. She said, I really don't want to, I just want to get this done and over,
Yeah.
but I can't argue with his success. And so we tried it. And man, Jonathan, I swear, literally following the blueprint that he laid out and getting to 10 doors, it's like when we got to that point, it was like, oh, wait a minute, I can breathe. Oh, this one's late on their rent a month. That's okay because the other 9 are rocking and rolling. Oh, this one, the water heater leaked and I've got to replace the water heater and then pull up the flooring in the kitchen and replace that. It's no big deal because the other 8 or 9 are rocking and rolling. And it literally just exactly the way that Johnny laid it out, it happened just like that. And so I truly attribute a lot of where we are right now to the wisdom that he gave me that day that we sat down for lunch, and he took 3 hours out of his time and he even bought lunch.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to show you what's out there for investors. They love to help other people. I mean, really, all of us do. It just has to be someone like yourself who came to the table really wanting to learn something and open and vulnerable about it. I think as investors, you get, like any of us on social media or with podcasts, we get a lot of questions, but there's a difference between how somebody comes to you to ask. It's like,
yes,
I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I've hit this wall. I've tried this. What do I do? That's a great question, as opposed to saying hey, how do I become a good real estate investor?
Right.
No one wants to answer that. I can't tell you. I don't even know anything about you, and there's so many ways to go wrong. I don't want to make it sound easy, all the social media makes it sound easy. Just become a wholesaler. You'll make $1 million a year. You don't have any money. So I don't know how you're, they're saying you don't need the money. But so where do you usually buy your properties? Are you buying them on the MLS or do you have local contacts yourself?
That's an awesome question. I'll take them anywhere I can get them. So we, of course, now that I've kind of opened up the veil a little bit, I've got other wholesalers now that are reaching out saying, hey, I've seen you at these real estate meetups, or I've heard you speak, or I saw you on this podcast. And so, I know that you like mobile home parks. The one that we have in Alabama came from 2 guys that knew that I liked mobile home parks. And they said, we were presented with this one down in Alabama, but right now we're taking on another project and don't have the bandwidth for this one. Would you be interested? And so I said, yeah, shoot, yeah. So I went down and took a look at it and put it under contract. So a lot of that comes from the networking aspect. Wholesalers are amazing, especially the ethical ones that
the good ones,
the good ones that you can sit down with and you can say, this is where I'm comfortable. This is, kind of what I like. This is the area of town I'm looking for, that type of thing. That is huge. Wholesalers can be great. But my partner and I, Chris, we just bought a house off the MLS. And it's funny because, I'll go to these real estate meetups and people say, oh, you can't find any good deals on the MLS. Well,
I bought almost all of my flips in the last 5 years off the MLS.
Yeah, exactly. So this one, it was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in Clarksville and close, not far from Austin Peay State University. And on that one, the people started out at $130,000. Well, on that particular house, it was rough. At $130,000, they were hoping to find an end user, meaning somebody was going to move into it with their family and that kind of thing. And, the house was just not in end user condition. It was really primed for somebody like us as real estate investors to come in and purchase. And so we went to the real estate agent and said, okay, let's offer 110 cash, close quickly. Said, okay, because we've got a line of credit at the bank that we can pull from. And they accepted our offer and said, okay, we'll do that. Well, I'd walked the property and I knew there were going to be some issues with the electrical and we wanted to do a home inspection. And so we did. And then sure enough, the home inspector confirmed the concerns that I saw with the electrical.
Yeah.
And I went to my electrician and said, this is our issue. And he went out and looked at it and said, it's probably going to run about 10 grand because we're going to have to rewire the entire house.
Yeah.
And went back to the real estate agent, wrote out this really nice paragraph and attached a copy of the home inspection report and the estimate from the electrician. And we dropped our offer by 10 grand. And, as we had to point out to the seller's agent, we said, look, and it's a little bit of a tactic on our part. It's strategic in doing it this way. So if people are listening, that take note. The reason why we sent a copy of the home inspection and a copy of the estimate from the electrician over to the seller's real estate agent is because in many states like Tennessee, we have what's called a property disclosure
That's
document
exactly what I'm
that you
thinking.
have to
Very
fill
smart.
out that says these are the issues that I'm aware of with this property that I am offering up for sale.
Correct.
Well, once you disclose that you have found something through a home inspection and you send that to their agent and copy the seller, then if they come back and say, oh, no, that's ridiculous. We've already taken $20,000 off the price and we're not going to negotiate anymore. And you're either going to buy it for 110 or you need to walk. That's fine. Then we'll walk. But every person that comes after me, you now legally have to disclose the electrical issues. And so they knew we'd kind of backed them into a corner a little bit. And it wasn't malicious on our part. It was
I think it's fair.
$10,000. And that I've got to come up with that somewhere. And so they said, hey, we completely understand. And yes, we'll drop the price another 10 grand. And so a house that started at $130,000 on the MLS, we got a $30,000 discount.
Yeah,
so
but fairly though, because you said they were shooting for end buyers, which wasn't realistic. So you gave them a realistic investor's price with what you had to do. And then you gave them, again, quantifiable information from an expert, a licensed electrician to come in. That's all fair game. That point is fantastic. I've been talking about this for years and I use it. I'm a licensed agent. I have a big team with 30 agents. And it's not really, so much a tactic. It's really just the truth. We're in we have a seller's disclosure. They don't have to fill them out, but if they have one, and then we send you, hey, this is what's wrong with you have a septic problem, you have to disclose it moving forward. And also the one thing that I always say, which is similar to what you were saying, is when they come back and they're like, oh, well, we're not going to do that. They're hoping that someone else doesn't find what you found. And that's just bad karma all around. So I always say, what do you think's going to happen? We all use the same inspector. Someone's going to come in. You're just hoping someone doesn't do a sewer inspection, or you're hoping someone doesn't do all the due diligence that I did, but they're probably going to. So you're going to wait 30 days, you're going to be back in the same situation. But P.S., once you go back on the market and everybody knows the time frame, they're going to all know it was an inspection issue. So you're going to keep losing money. And that's, again, like we say, like it's a tactic, but really it's the truth. We're just negotiating real estate, I think, the right way. If you're being transparent about what you found and they don't want to see it. I've had to tell agents, look, I'm just telling you, when you cancel, I'm going to watch and I'm going to see if you update the seller's disclosure. And if not, you know about it. So you're going to be in trouble. Sorry. Right. That's just the truth. If real estate was more transparent, it would be easier for all of us. So I think that when we do that, quote, do that to people, I think that we're helping the industry. I don't think it's bad. It's why I like wholetailing. Wholetailing, I feel like if I do it that way, I can buy, close, do the full, disclose my entire home inspection report that way so that someone has full leverage into what it is. Like, here's all the problems. I love when wholesalers have done they've looked at the electric and they said, this is what you're dealing with. Like, that's what I get. One thing I want to talk about, because you were still talking about good wholesalers and when they have overages, and I want to see what you think on this. In my opinion, the best wholesalers don't start out as wholesalers. They start off as investors who are running an investing business, and they're so good at marketing, they have overage. And then they're like, well, we can't flip 8 properties. And that's when they come to people like you and say, hey, like, do you want this? And it's a good deal because they never started with no money and just tried to make money from being wholesale. That's where it goes wrong. They're good at getting properties, talking to people, and they can't close on the deals. Is that where some of your deal flow comes from what you were saying before?
So some of it will come from that. Some of it just comes from those wholesalers that know this is kind of my bread and butter. This is my niche. I like, small multifamily. I love things that's, 10 or 15 doors or less. I love things that we can force equity and force appreciation. I don't want to go buy someone's brand new apartment complex. I want to buy something that's 30 years old that needs new water heaters and that kind of thing because it helps me with the BRRRR strategy. even with interest rates being what they are today, it helps with the BRRRR strategy when you can go in and force that appreciation by taking rents to market rents, or going in and forcing that appreciation because you've, updated kitchens and updated appliances and that type of thing. One of the things that people, they really kind of get shocked about when you're talking about the BRRRR strategy. And for somebody that's listening to this and doesn't know what that is, BRRRR stands for you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it, you refinance it, and then you repeat those first 4 steps. And so we actually did that with the mobile home park, where we bought the mobile home park. We borrowed the down payment from another investor and went in and brought some of the trailers that were not in good shape. We brought them up to good, healthy living standards. We went in and readjusted the rents across the board to get the rents up to a market rate. And then I went back to the same bank 9 months later and pulled over $100,000 out because it appraised so well just after 9 months, pulled that out, paid off our investor.
Yeah.
And now we're into that mobile home park for zero money down. And people, I know that, oh, well, you can't flip a house in 30 minutes. And you see, Tark and Christina do that. And there's a level of skepticism there. But I can tell you that when you can go in and buy a mobile home park for $625,000 and refinance it 9 months later and pull every single dollar of your initial down payment back out, pay off your investor, and have $0 in a 15-pad mobile home park, like, come on.
That's the ideal BRRRR. I mean, that's why it was created. But so let me give you this idea before we wrap up. In some areas, I started promoting what I call reverse BRRRR, which I'm sure you'll get. So it's the same letters, but I switched the first 2 R's. And the reason why this works is buy, rent, then rehab, then refinance. You have to have cash available to sit in the property, to leave in the property. But there's a lot of properties that are on the market that are a little bit undervalued in rent, but the tenant's not leaving. So a lot of times, if I like the scale of that area for appreciation, the reverse BRRRR model will work, where it's not a great unit right now, but what's it going to look like in 3 years when the tenant leaves? And they like it the way it is. It's messy, but you do have to leave the cash in the deal, because then when you buy, rent, wait, then they leave 2 years, 3 years, then you rehab, and then you refinance. You're getting a huge windfall there, even bigger, because you got the appreciation window of 2 to 3 years as well.
Nice.
Again, awesome. It doesn't work if you can't leave cash in the deal, but if you're buying like in lower priced areas and the rent's okay, those are ones that you can usually buy. Their cash flow is going to be over 1% rule, because it's not great now. And if you're okay with managing that type of property, you can get that windfall later.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That is fantastic.
I think I made it up, reverse BRRRR. I've never heard anyone else say it.
We're going to give you credit for it.
I'm taking it. I've never heard anyone else say it. Awesome. So, Perry, if you could give one piece of advice to real estate investors who are entering this market now, wanting to become an investor, this economic climate now, what would you tell them?
Take action. I don't even have to think about it. Take action. Going back to what you and I talked about a few minutes ago, there's a lot of times that I'll get that person that says, hey, can I buy your coffee or can I buy your lunch, and let's sit down and let's, I want to learn how to do what you do and that kind of thing. I feel a certain sense of obligation because Johnny was so amazing at taking, 3+ hours at lunch, and he bought my lunch, and, he didn't have to do that, but he did. And he kind of opened up my eyes to, a different way of looking at real estate investing. And so I love when people want to sit down and talk about that. And I always try to make time for that. It's paying it forward. And I feel like it's the least I can do. And again, like you said earlier, real estate investors love to talk about what they do. It's not a narcissistic thing. It's just, we love to talk about it. We have a passion for it. But I cannot tell you the number of people that I sit down with or that I'll take an hour to, go have coffee with that say, oh yeah, I want to get into real estate investing and I want to do this and I want to do that. And then they never do anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? And I always try and tell people, whether it's on podcasts like this, or whether I'm meeting them in person, look, I'm not that smart. And it's not that I've got it all figured out. God's blessed me with great hair, but it's not that I'm just this intelligent. It's because somebody else took the time to say, this is how you do it. Follow these steps. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't come up with a new way. I just did what I was told. I followed instructions and I took action. And even when you run up against that brick wall, you just find a way to continue to take action and make the deal happen.
Yeah.
And so I would say that one piece of advice, take action.
Yeah, it's great. And to take action, you need to have your finances ordered so you can figure that out. And that's your first part. So there's lots of pre-steps for actually taking action on a deal. It's meeting other investors, going to meetups, making sure your finances are at least in order so you can present them to someone so you know what your funding options are. Mm-hmm. It's great advice. Perry, where's the best place for people to get in touch with you? Is it on Instagram where you are the Flippin', Justin and Mayor, the Flippin' Mayor?
That is a great spot. There's I'll give you the short version of how we came up with that. So again, because we were very private about, what we did. Yeah. But also because I didn't want to come across arrogant when I would go to one of the properties where we were flipping a house or working on, rehab for a buy and hold. I would always try to ditch my mayor golf shirt and put on a regular t-shirt and that kind of thing. Cause I didn't want the guys that were doing work for us to feel like, oh, he thinks he's special, And so this one day I was running late and I had to go meet our siding guy and I didn't have time to change shirts. And so I get out of the car and he looks at me and he says, what are you wearing? And I thought, oh boy, here it goes. And
you thought you'd sneak by.
I thought I would sneak by and I said, oh, well, he's like, no. He said, you're the mayor of Pleasant View? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, so you're the house flipping mayor? And I said, oh, believe me, I've been called the flipping mayor more times than you can count. And he just thought that was so funny. And it just kind of stuck. Yeah. And so when it came time to come up with an Instagram handle, we said, hey, the flipping mayor with no G. Yeah. So there it is. So Instagram is a great way. I'm an open book. I'm happy to give out my cell phone number here online or as a podcast. It's 615-336-3401. Call or text or what have you. Yeah. And I don't care if somebody's listening to this out of state and they're like, man, I want to pick that guy's brain about this or that. Yeah. Call me, shoot me a message on Instagram. I'm happy to do that. And just like last night, wearing a different hat, but with somebody that, was looking for insurance on their rental property, being in the landlord game, and I hate that word landlord, I prefer property owner, but being in that landlord space and owning, rental properties, there's just a different way to do insurance on that. And as someone that has properties, I kind of know where some of those pitfalls are. So I love talking to other real estate investors that are trying to put insurance on a project because I've been there, I live it, I speak your language.
Yep. And there's an Instagram for your insurance company too. PK My Insurance Guy. I got all these things in here. Perry, amazing. It was an absolute pleasure getting to know you. I look forward to staying in touch. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Dude, Jonathan, man, your show is fantastic. I love listening to the guests that you've got that are way smarter than me. And so I just appreciate you letting me be in that rare air with you and them, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. This was episode 57 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Perry Keenan, and me, Jonathan Green. We'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.